Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first of our Limitless Possibilities talks on creative filmmaking within limitations. The college resides on the ancestral and unceded lands of the Massachusetts people, whose name was appropriated by the Commonwealth. And I'm currently in Providence, Rhode Island, the occupied land of the Narragansett and Wampanoag people. My name is Anna Fetter, and I'm the Director of Programming in the Visual and Media Arts Department at Emerson College. Just a housekeeping note, please submit all of your questions via the Q&A at any time during the conversation, and I will share them with the moderator, Maria Agui Carter, when we get to that portion of the conversation. And we also have live captions provided by Catherine Zielinski, so thank you, Catherine. So let me introduce our moderator for this evening. Maria is the founder of Iguana Films and professor at Emerson College. Recent work includes the hybrid fiction, nonfiction feature Rebel, which we screened at the college as part of Bright Lights. Currently on Amazon Prime, winner of a 2014 Eric Barna Award for Best Historical Films in America, and the PBS Psy Girls, nominated for a 2019 Daytime Emmy. She's now shooting Alleged, about Patricia Esparza, imprisoned for the murder of her rapist by her boyfriend. In development is her magical realist feature script, Secret Life of La Mariposa, a fable on immigration and climate change based on her experience growing up undocumented. Supported by the Sundance Feature Film Program, the film is produced by Barbara DeFina of Goodfellas and Silence, with Maria set to direct. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you, Anna, and I am so excited to be able to introduce and speak with today Ramona Diaz, who is a Filipino-American documentary filmmaker, best known for creating character-driven documentaries. Ramona is an award-winning Asian-American filmmaker whose films have screened at Sundance, the Berlinale, Tribeca, the Biennale, IDFA, and many other top-tier film festivals. All of Ramona's feature-length films, Imelda, The Learning, Don't Stop Believing, Every Man's Journey, and Motherland have been broadcast on PBS. Her current film, 1,000 Cuts, is currently playing in virtual cinemas around the country and will premiere on Frontline in early 2021. Ramona's been nominated for an Independent Spirit Award, a Peabody Award, and a Gawad-Orion Award from the Filipino Film Critics. She received a prestigious Guggenheim Fellowship and was inducted into the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in 2016, and in 2017 received a Women at Sundance Fellowship and a Chicken and Egg Pictures Breakthrough Filmmaker Award. Ramona is a graduate of Emerson College, and she holds an MA from Stanford University. Welcome, Ramona. It is so lovely to see you.
Hi, Maria.
Hello. And wow, Maria Ressa and 1,000 Cuts, what an inspiration. Thank you for bringing this story to the screen.
Oh, you're welcome. And thanks for having me. I wish I were there, in person, but here we are. So,
yes.
Yeah, here we are. Yeah.
And I wanted to start by asking you, your film ends as Maria Ressa is sentenced to 6 years and faces multiple other lawsuits and charges. Can you tell us how she's doing and what happened with her and Rappler in the Philippines since then?
So since she was, the judgment came down, and that was June 15th, 2020, in the middle of pandemic. She's still in the Philippines. She's out on bail. And she still has 8 other cases and counting, because they just keep throwing cases at her, which is the point, right? To keep her busy, to bankrupt her, to make her do all these other things except her job. And she's, I think, anticipating a couple more verdicts before the end of the year. She has been disallowed travel. She's fighting that. She's also, that's in the Court of Appeals now. And it's in strict lockdown. The Philippines has one of the strictest lockdowns in the world, because President Duterte's response to COVID has been like his response to the drug war. It's very militaristic. It's not a public health response. So it's a police response. So if you're found non-compliant outside without a mask, you're arrested. If you resist arrest, and that can mean anything, right? That can be just like maybe arguing or discussing your situation. You can be, you can be shot, jailed, whatever. It's very scary. So everyone stays home. There's curfew. And it's getting, it's spiking again all over the world. So they're going back to that. It kind of eased up, but now it's locking down again. So she's in lockdown. She's still speaking. She's talking. She's on a lot of panels. They have not stopped her from speaking out. And I think keeping her story alive in the global stage really helps her, because I think they don't do more to her because she is, because the spotlight is on her, believe it or not. So this is a good thing that people keep on talking about her.
Yeah, and as a documentarian, sometimes we are partnering with subjects who already face serious risks when they're doing something or about to do something much more public. And in one sense, you could think maybe we're putting them at even higher risk, right? Bringing notoriety for what they're doing against whatever injustice they're fighting. How did you approach that and think about that as you thought about both filming her and now bringing her story to larger audiences? How did you deal with that?
When I started filming her, she wasn't breaking news. I mean, she wasn't, she was already in the crosshairs of the president, but not, but it became worse and worse as we started filming her. She was arrested twice and detained once when we were filming her. Right before we started, she became, Time named her Person of the Year, one of the Persons of the Year 2018. Right. And then she thought, okay, this is a problem. It's either going to be a problem or it's going to help me. She was worried, actually. And then turns out it helped her, right? Because suddenly they eased up because of all the attention. She's now Time Person of the Year. So by the time we started filming with her, this was like a month later, and then she became Time 100. And that, she knew then the attention on her was actually helping. So she assured me that, yes, come film, because I think it's helping me. And then we traveled with her. So we served also as guards, right? When she would deplane, she didn't know whether she was going to be arrested or not, but we were there documenting it. So I think I took my cue from her. If she thought it was going to help her, I had to trust that, because obviously I didn't want to get her in trouble. And she did give us a lot of access, more access than we had ever that I ever really needed or dared ask, right? I mean, I was in places that I shouldn't have been, like legal strategy, planning with her lawyers, with the understanding that, of course, I couldn't release it because it would put her in jeopardy. And obviously I would not, because to her, she just didn't have the time to tell me to leave, or to police me in that way. So she just trusted me. And yeah, more than I ever deserved, really, because I just met her. So it was quite an interesting thing. Also, filming a journalist is they understand, first of all, they understand story, but they also understand this, that they're hands off in a way. Once they give their okay, they're hands off. They can't censor me. They can't. So they kept to that journalistic ethics with me, which I really appreciated. It's very, very interesting filming a journalist.
Very interesting. Also, given that she's a public figure, the kind of intimacy you were able to achieve, which speaks to your own talents as a filmmaker. I wanted to ask you about yourself and your crew. What was your relationship to the Duterte and all of his cronies, and what was it like for you? Were you feeling at risk? There are many times when you were not with Maria.
I actually had to ask Duterte's permission, his people, because we wanted to film him up close. We wanted to be in the pit filming him during the rallies, as opposed to the media box. The media box were so far away. I mean, they didn't get that close, but I wanted to get close. And for that, I needed special permission. And, before Maria really became the center of the film, my idea for the film was more ensemble. It was an ensemble cast, but it's like Robert Altman-esque. I always pitched it as shortcuts, right? Sort of, then there's this pesticide over Manila, and that was Duterte. And it was all the experience of all these people at this time in the land of Duterte. That was that was the idea. And then as you know, as life unfolds, someone becomes a center of gravity. You know, sometimes it doesn't happen that way. Like Motherland, no one was really the center of gravity, but this time Maria was, because she was the one who was getting arrested, and a very compelling story. But by the time I started filming Maria, the president knew I was making this film, because I had asked permission, and I was also filming his very close allies, you know, like Mocha Uson and the general, and very transparent with them that I was also filming Maria. I mean, we couldn't hide, because every time she got arrested, we were on television with her, filming her. So there was no way we could hide. But I think because they knew what we were doing, we were not hiding, that also gave us a shield. I felt more secure that they knew we were there than being under the radar and trying to hide. Um, I mean, there were many times we were questioned about, you know, how much longer we were going to shoot, how much longer we were going to be in the country. But beyond that, they knew we were going to film the elections. They knew we were filming Maria. It was the opposite, actually. The fact that they knew we were doing this sort of was a security blanket for us.
Fascinating. Now, you were also in production on this film as America too reeled under what some would call a leader trying to create an authoritarian regime. And as Maria Ressa says at the end of your film, we're meant to be a cautionary tale. If you don't use your rights, you will lose them. Can you talk about some of the lessons your film has for America?
You know, I realize that democracy is so fragile. Systems are so fragile. It takes forever to build them, and takes a few years to really destroy everything you've worked for, especially in the Philippines. You know, we were under the Marcos regime for 30 years, from the early 70s to 86, right? But before that, he was already president. So, you know, close to 20 years. And it took all this time to really build the institutions of democracy. All this time, and vigilance, and it was hard work. And it took it took a President Duterte in 2 years to really destroy all of it. So that's what, and I thought in this country, the institutions will be stronger. And they are. I mean, the Philippines is not the US, the US is not in the Philippines. Of course, we have leaders that have the same impulses, you know, this authoritarian impulses. But certainly the institutions here are stronger, but not in the Philippines. It's so, if you really take your eye off the ball, they will crumble. So it's really, you need to be vigilant citizens. That's what I'm learning. And I think, we said we screened the film for free in the Philippines for 24 hours. I don't know if you know, we did right before her verdict in June. And we got a lot of eyes on it. I mean, close to a quarter of, like 233,000 full views in 24 hours. This is right before her verdict. And we filmed this for free. And we made the decision so quickly that we didn't even get word out there. You know, I think we just put it out on social, and then it just hit the zeitgeist. You know, it's like, it was really like wildfire. And all throughout, oh my God, Maria, I was so taken by, I think I was prepared for the anger. I wasn't prepared for the sadness and the deep disappointment in themselves for being in the same situation again. It's like, oh my God, how did this happen? What happened? Where were we? Weren't we paying attention? It was really, that was a tough time for me, because I was getting a lot of messages over the 24 hours. And it was a deep sadness, of course, compounded by the fact that we're, you know, in lockdown. It's pandemic, everyone's home. Obviously that, right? So you have time to reflect more. Yeah, it was really what a heavy weekend, but also cathartic, I think, for a lot of people to see it and know that they have to do something. I don't know what that something is, but it's spurred into action. Yeah.
Yes, knowing what you have to do. And,
yes.
But that also is a lesson for us, because we're not done.
No, it's a little scary, actually. I mean, I felt the stress leave my body over the weekend. And then yesterday I was like, wait, just a minute, there's something going on. What is going on? Can they actually subvert, the results of the elections? That's incredible. So no, we're not done. And even even if we were done, we're not done, right? Even if when Biden is inaugurated in January, we're not done. It's like 70 million people voted for him. We're far from done.
Absolutely. And it brings me to another question, which is about, in your film, you show how conscious Maria is about the information ecosystem, what it looks like, the power of fake news, and the way that journalistic stories can be completely converted, right? Duterte calls Rappler a fake news center, and we've heard that at home.
Yeah.
I've been forcing myself actually to watch Fox News periodically to hear how they frame what's going on, and recently what's going on post-election. And when I watch that, I see a completely different reality if I listen to the way Fox frames what's happening in the country, or CNBC. Can you speak specifically to journalism's role in a democratic society? Like, what brings you to this particular story? Why Maria Ressa really popped out as the lead character in your film?
I was drawn back. I was finishing Motherland actually when President Duterte became president, and I was drawn back to the Philippines because I wanted to cover the drug war. I wanted to make a film about the drug war. And I think I returned in late 2017, a lot of people were already doing the drug war. A lot of films have since come out about the drug war, right? And I felt like, I don't do breaking news. I don't know how to navigate that. And I felt like it's breaking news every night. So that's when I looked around, and there was Maria Ressa. Not only was she talking about the drug war, she was talking about impunity. She was questioning numbers, talking about impunity, and also how that all related to disinformation and weaponizing social media. So all the intersectionality of all those things made it more a global story. I mean, it's very specifically the Philippines, but it sort of transcends the specificity because of disinformation and all these global problems that Maria talks about. And I think she had been talking about algorithms in Facebook. Her very first article is in 2016, when no one was talking about it. But she was already tracking it. Before she got interested in disinformation, she was tracking terrorist cells, patterns. So she saw it as patterns. She goes, it's not content. Because if you go after content, that's a whack-a-mole game, right? You put it out here, it comes out. It goes, you can never win the battle when it's content. You have to look at the systems and the patterns and go after the people who started, the channels, right? The big cells. That's how you do it. It's like terrorism. It's like tracking terrorism, which fascinated her. And she, to me, explained it so clearly. And I saw it so clearly in my head. I'm like, oh my God, why aren't people talking about this more? And that's why she became more, that's why I became interested in her. So she was part of the many stories I was going to tell. But on top of that, in real time, then they were seeding in 2016 that she was a criminal, that she was guilty of cyber libel and tax evasion. By the time I came, like we were on the ground in 2019, that became a reality, right? So whatever was seeded in the virtual space became real for her. She was arrested. She was, and that's when we entered her life. So that's when she became more the center of the film, because these things were actually happening as we filmed her. And it's like, of course, very, very bad for her. So, but, the documentary gods, sometimes, they say, here, it's your story. Don't look away because this is your story now. And the way she does it, the way she handles she talks about it constantly, right? She talks about knowing that you are already manipulated, knowing that we're standing on rubble. It's already done. Your data has been sold. That's done. What do you do about it now? So she's looking for solutions moving forward. And for her, people should really just be aware, the awareness that what is being sold online is you. You're the product, your data. Just so you're aware every time you log on, and the news you see is not the news everyone sees, and you're being played. The awareness of that, right, is you can do something in your immediate sphere by not sharing all the time, or reading it, and maybe you don't have to share it, just read it. So just awareness of what the space is. It's not neutral, right? They've already picked you to read certain things and to make you feel a certain way. She always says that hatred spreads faster on the internet than, I guess, the opposite. Empathy, sympathy, and that's what gets shared faster, because that's how it's set up. That's how the engineering system of the platforms are set up. So, as a journalist, they just need to keep doing their jobs. They just need to keep shining the light more than ever. They're needed to do it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Hate spreads faster in social media. That sensationalist, strong feeling, and it feels like Maria is all about love, right? And
Yeah, she is.
her work is about love,
Yeah.
and I feel like your work is that too.
Oh.
I think that's so important, right? It's about building, not destroying. So,
Yeah. Like
yeah.
she always says, hope builds. Hate does not. So there is no. We have no. There's no chance if all there is hate, because really hope is the builder.
Yeah.
Of things. Yeah. And she really is like that. She really is optimistic. She sees the possibilities, which is very inspiring. And I am hardly an optimist. Some things are, rubbing off on me, but it's not my go-to. It is her go-to. I thought it was just, you can't fake that, right? You can't. And I think something happens to her when she's under fire, and I've observed her, she goes into her journalist mode. It's almost as if she steps back and is observing herself. It's really, she goes into that observer mode as a journalist. So even if she's in court and they are talking about her, right? She's the subject of the law, of the suit. She actually takes out a notebook and she starts writing. It's like writing like a journalist. So one time I said, Maria, my God, what are you writing? Copious notes. But just, yeah. She goes, I have to take notes. I have to see what, I have to read it later on to find out what was said, but I have to remember. I said, so you're being a journalist? She goes, all the time. She goes, that's how I can cope and see it without any kind of, because she goes, emotion will cloud my instincts, will cloud the clarity. I'm not clear. So in order for me to be clear, I have to step back and be a journalist. It's fascinating. It's a discipline. It's a discipline.
Yeah. I mean, I think you practice that as well. Journalist, a documentarian, a vessel for the story. And you do have to separate in order to be able to have the clarity to make the choices about what you are recording. Now we're screening this film, A Thousand Cuts, as part of a series called Limitless Possibilities, and it's about how filmmakers come up with creative solutions to restrictions and limits as they produce. And right now, yes, we're in a pandemic, but there's so many limits we often face as documentarians. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you, any limits that you were facing as you were thinking about how to put this together and then how to get it out.
The limit on this one was time. I was lucky enough to have a subject that people wanted to fund. Really, it was about Duterte, journalism, press freedom, the fourth estate, authoritarian, and everything that's very timely right now. And I was in that space when after I realized I wasn't doing the drug war. I was doing something bigger like this information. It really resonated with the stakeholders like Concordia Studio, and Topic came on, and Illuminate came on later. But it was a matter of getting there and getting it done, right? And what is the story? It's like, oh my God, is Maria really the story? I have my explorations. Sometimes I don't know if I'm making the right choices. It's very intuitive for me. I listen to my intuition a lot. Okay, who am I supposed to follow now? I had 2 units on the ground, but we still had to make choices. Today, are we really sticking with Maria? She might just be at Rappler doing nothing. Or do we go with the general? Or do we go with Mokausan? Those were choices which were lucky choices, right? Those are still privileged choices because you're already on the ground with 2 units. My goodness, right? So sometimes I made the right choice. Sometimes you don't make the right choice, but the trick is to get over it. Right? It's a choice. You made the wrong choice. Get over it. There's another story around the corner. Tomorrow is another day. Something else will happen. And then getting it out quickly because we were barely, we were barely done shooting even, and we were putting together a cut. And then this is not really a problem. I shouldn't even say this is a problem, but it was a challenge because we got into Sundance very early. With the first cut, right? And we submitted because that's what you do when Sundance comes around. It's like, let's see, we have a film, let's submit. Maybe we'll get into it. It was a very, very, very early cut, and then we got in. And so we had to cut our post-production in half. So usually I have a 9-month post-production schedule. We got in late October. We had to deliver in January. So it was 3 months of really craziness. And this time last year, we were crazy. So basically we rushed and rushed and rushed. We didn't have any holidays. We skipped everything. Thanksgiving, Christmas, we skipped everything. Got it to Sundance, and then the pandemic happened, right? It's like, and then we hit the wall. We're like, oh my God, what happened? We were going so fast and then nothing happened. But I was lucky this time. I mean, the challenges, of course, came, post-pandemic. How do you now roll out a film when no one's going to see it? What are you going to do? Do you go virtual? You want to the theaters? Yes, maybe virtual. But we decided to pivot early, and we did virtual quickly. Because if this were Motherland, I would wait. I would want to wait for next year, with the possibility that maybe we can do live screenings in theaters and stuff. But because of the content, I knew I couldn't wait. It's like that would have been unfair for the people I filmed, for the people who purchased the film. I mean, everything. It was so ripe for now. And I said, okay, let's go, whatever it looks like. And we committed to virtual cinema. We had no idea what that was even like. I mean, there were still promises of one theater here and there being open. That never happened. So we're purely, we rolled out virtually over the summer. And we're still in virtual cinema, which is fine. You don't even ever have to leave virtual cinema. So it's been tough, but definitely silver linings. Definitely. I do miss, nothing can ever replace live, and nothing should. But I think moving forward, it will be a combination of, because on the one hand, it's a lot of people who otherwise don't have access to all the screenings and conversations and panels now have access. And that'll be a shame if that goes away, the access in that way. So I think moving forward, it'll always be a combination of virtual and live. I don't think live will ever go away because we need it as filmmakers for our soul to be with people in the theater and with each other, right?
Yeah, and I think audiences need that as well, that community experience. It's very hard to replicate. And I am interested in your early observations of this kind of distribution, because I also, like you, feel like there will be some kind of hybrid down the line, partly because of the devastation that we're seeing of festivals and of exhibitors, right? But also partly because there is that increased access that you were talking about. So how is it going, and what are you hoping will happen? What's worked about it?
I think, okay, what's worked about it is if it's live, it works. We finding out, like, okay, at the end, there still has to be some kind of FOMO, right? There still has to be that element of you should have been there and you weren't. You couldn't get in. That will always be there, and people feel like, I think in order to make it special, in a way, so live is always good. Capping streams, and all that is always good. Not so much geo blocking. It's capping streams, right? In a way, I want it to be nationwide. I want people to see it nationwide, but let's cap it, because also for my distributors. I mean, the marketplace is still real, so you still have to be responsible to your distributors. But they've been really amazing with us, for whatever, whenever I wanted it, like not geo blocked, for example, because I feel like, okay, let's have everyone see it in the country for 24 hours, right? Then we cap it, and we cap time, and we cap the streams, the people who can watch it. But I found that, but then there is this live event that's, I think, more exciting. But that live event gets recorded and gets seen by people anyway, and I think people are catching on that. Oh, we can see it anyway later. And there's also a fatigue, right? A fatigue sets in with this kind of virtual conversations. I think it's just so much coming at you in a different way, and you can just, sometimes it's like a buffet, right? Stacey, oh, I'm gonna leave this room, I'm going to the other room, because there's so many things going on any given night. So I hope the audience stays with us. So, okay.
Oh, I'm sure they will. You're fascinating to listen to, and you're talking to a professor who's on Zoom for hours, constantly.
Right.
And so, but I can understand the fatigue. I have another question. You're such an accomplished BIPOC filmmaker, creating in a media world largely run by white male executives and greenlighters, who have traditionally supported white voices to tell most stories, including those of BIPOC communities. So often used is the phrase, giving voice to the voiceless, with oftentimes well-meaning ideas that a white filmmaker who does have access to media tools and to funding can bring a story of a BIPOC community's inequity to the public to help create change. And that's such a good thing. But we're also living in a moment where more BIPOC are having internal conversations as media makers about their frustrations, that there is a paternalism, that there is a colonialist history that we are dealing with, and that attitude needs to change. Can you speak to that?
I've been doing this for a long time, right? And I think at the beginning, I was the only one of Filipino American, I think, who was doing Filipino stories. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning, I felt like I had to make an excuse for that. That's all I wanted to make, because I knew it. It's not as if it was like that's all I was allowed to make. It's like, no, that's my interest. And I felt like I always had to make an excuse, right? No, I really also want to do other things, but this is what I want to do now. And I think because of the many years of doing it and being first in the space, I was sort of allowed to do it because no one else wanted to do it. I was given the opportunity. And also a lot of it came from public television, right? Public money, PBS. I would not be here without PBS, On the other hand, I wasn't given series like Ken Burns, right? I was given one show in Independent Lens, one show in POV, which I'm still very thankful for. But neither was I. It was still like proving myself every time, right? I always say, why are you making me like do a startup every time? You know my work already. It's like I already have a structure. Why am I having to build every time I go out for funding? And like I made a music doc, right? And I'm very aware that if I were white and male, I would have been offered a lot of music docs after Don't Stop. I wasn't. It's simply because of who I was. Was I interested? I wasn't interested either, right? So it didn't really bother me because I was on to the next thing. I wanted to do something else. But I can see how if you wanted to do that, and we're not allowed to, or we're not thought of as the person who could possibly do another music doc because that's what you want to do, that would be troubling and upsetting. thank God I didn't want to do another music doc, right? It wasn't something I was aspiring to do. I did it because I loved the story of Ernel Pineda, and that was it, and then moved on to something else. But there were listen, in the early days, I was the only one who looked like me in a lot of the rooms, panels, juries, and I would have to, in the beginning, I found myself self-censoring what I said, and then realized, this is useless if I don't speak up. So I learned to speak up, but I learned to brace myself, right? Fasten your seat, brace yourself, let's see. Because I would say, is that the right filmmaker to be telling that story? And to them, it's a very, very, I can't, of course, call out names. That's a very experienced filmmaker, of course. I said, really? So I would just put it out there. I'm sure I lost a lot of funding from people in the room because there were funders and gatekeepers. I'm sure there was like, maybe not work with this person because I would question it. But then I think I would not have, I would never have forgiven myself if I didn't speak up. But you need to speak up in those rooms. I've learned to speak up in those rooms. I have. And also, I'm not the only one who looks like me now, right? More and more, it's becoming more diverse, really, in those kinds of panels and juries and funding situations.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I had similar experiences being the only one in the room, and a follow-up question has been like, how do we determine who should be allowed to tell which story? At what point is a film a true creative collaboration and allyship with a community versus a filmmaker coming into a community, choosing a subject they may not have been committed to in the past, but now they're pitching it because it's part of a larger trend or conversation. So the question of a white filmmaker telling a Native American, Black, Latinx, Asian community story, I've always had questions about how do you decide what's right and what's wrong, right? And how much have they earned the right to tell that story, right? And anyone has to earn that right, even if you come from within that community.
It's so tough because there are no rules, right? Every project has to be looked at differently and has to be studied differently. But there are always clues, I find, in the proposal, in how they talk about the subject, how long they've really been pursuing it. And I think the way they write about it, I think is sometimes more simplistic or complicated. I think there are always clues, and there are always clues to the filming, right? Right, when you see the sample, you're like, the lens will tell you, like the gaze will tell you, and sometimes it's so ineffable. I can't even explain to you what it is, but it's always a feeling of, I'm uncomfortable with that gaze. I'm uncomfortable with that. What is going on here? And I think there are always clues, but then you really have to be careful, right? You have to be careful and really question it. And that's why I think panels are so important. Those funding panels are so important because you can really talk about it. And there's a willingness now to talk about it. Okay, is this the right person? What are we seeing here? What are they trying to do? What are they trying to say? When do they want to say this? Why now? Why, in their career, why are they doing this now? I think there's more a willingness to engage in that conversation now than before. Before, it wasn't even a conversation. It was like, what do you mean? This is a very experienced filmmaker. But now we go there. We have those, as you know, right? In those panels, you can have a more meaningful engagement around those issues. And that's a big difference, I think.
Yeah, the willingness to listen and to even consider that as a question seems new.
Yeah.
I have another question. You don't live in a center of media like LA or New York, but now you're a very established filmmaker. We have a lot of Emerson students, and just wondering, do you feel that there's a point in your career, maybe early in your career, where it is important to live in a media center? And how does where you live affect how you work and how you have a community and network in the industry?
I think it's important early in your career to live in either, New York or LA or Boston, right? Boston, there's a bit, in terms of documentary, I think it is important. Community is important because, um, film is, it's not it's a team sport. I know it sounds so cliche, but it is. And also you need people's energy to bounce off of. Uh, Especially in your career, and you need a network to get jobs, to get that first job. You need to be around a community that's doing work. It's as simple as that. It's so practical, and then you learn, especially now when there are no apprenticeships. When I started, I actually had a mentor who was working, and i would I had a mentorship, I had a apprenticeship under him for like an entire series, and I learned how to actually make this ideas operational, how to make a film. Really, you learned that in school, but then it's different out there. But certainly, I think if I were earlier in my career, I wouldn't be in Baltimore. I'm here because of personal circumstance, but now I've found I don't have to be in either New York or LA, but I do still miss it because I miss the screenings. I miss out on a lot living here. That's for sure. So it's not that I haven't thought of like, well, I should move to New York. I should move there. But I just haven't done it because I also like the quiet. I can work a lot. I can actually write. I don't have any distractions. I write. And as you know, well, pre-pandemic, I used to travel a lot. So I was here very, I was traveling more than I was home. But I think as a young filmmaker, if you can, I think it's important. And if you can't, that you have to find the community where you are, and you have to show up, right? No matter how small it is. If someone is trying to do something, show up and support it, because you never know. It might spark something. Like in Baltimore, there's no documentary community. There wasn't, but now I'm feeling, the movement, and it's just a movement. It's small. But then I try to show up because I think it's important to support that kind of impulse, to meet.
Yeah. We're gonna. I'm gonna start asking some questions from the audience, which
Okay.
we're getting. And the first question is, have you had a chance to screen for a Filipino audience? I mean, you talked a little bit about that, but a Filipino American audience as well, and what was that response?
Yes, because we did the Asian American Film Festival Collective.
Mm.
So they weren't really. It's a mix, right? Usually when it's live, I know if it's a predominantly film audience. I know it, I feel it, I see it. But now I think they saw some were, but it's hard to tell. It's virtual audiences, right? Then I come in, I do a Q&A, and it's hard to know. We haven't had like tailored specifically for a film audience, right? So an Asian American audience, and it's really hard to tell how what the composition of the audience is. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. I don't know when, but soon.
Yeah, I would love to see it in Ava DuVernay's LA theater, because it's in that
Yeah,
Filipino area, right?
yeah.
So I can see that.
But see, virtual screenings are opened up to everyone now, right? Because
No,
what
no,
is
no, I
the
mean a
point of?
live one.
Oh, yes, from your lips. Oh my God, Maria. Yes, in the spring. That would be great. That'd be
Um, okay. What do you think about the new measures that platforms like Twitter have implemented? They now encourage you to read an article before sharing.
I think that's all good, right? It's a little too late. It's all good. I mean, steps in the right direction, right? All this helps, and taking down, lies, they all help. But gosh, you have to take it down before it's actually up, because once it's up, it could, you can never take it back, right? You can just never take it back, even if you take it down. But I think every little thing helps. do you actually read it before you share it? I think it is. It sort of shames you into sharing it immediately. You're like, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't share it. I think it's all good, but they have to do more. I think they have to do more because it's really. I wonder, 70 million people voted for the incumbent, right? What is the effect? I mean, what was the role of social media in that, right? Because they were all in silos. As you said, like someone's feed is so different from yours. And if you're always watching and you're immersed in that feed, will it become reality for you? So I'm really wondering, I know I know it affects people, but it'll be interesting to see without social media. Is it still 70 million? I wonder. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, because it's still a relatively new medium, social media, we are continuing to see the effects and also the new strategies for political campaigns,
Yeah.
for all of this. So I think we are not done with feeling, with unwittingly falling into specific political directions because of new and increasing social media platforms, and the ways that they're being used for disinformation,
Yeah.
as well as for information. So, you know, when you're talking about millions of people, that's a very complex thing, right?
But they always say that hate is incentivized, right, on social media. But can they change the engineering of social media then to incentivize empathy, for example? Right? Because there was a study that showed that once people uh, got off the platforms more, I mean, they consumed it less when in their earlier lives they found love. It's as if I know it sounds like a Hallmark card, but it's true. They found like a warmth in their lives. They got off social media. So can we then incentivize empathy and sympathy, just like hate is incentivized? Is that possible? Is that why? And if it is, why aren't the platforms doing that? Is that less money? I mean, I don't know. Does hate, does that mean more business? It's a very interesting, right? Because we're really being manipulated by
Yes.
the platforms.
I mean, it's interesting to me in terms of the future of exhibition because that is there's a certain enemy in watching something on a social media platform, on streaming, etc., and that issue of community, why we love festivals, why, because it's a gathering, and given the measures we've had to take with the pandemic, are we getting too used to that distance, right? And I think that we are so tired of the pandemic and the distance that we will return to the love and the connection with open arms because we are so hungry for that and we are seeing what it's like, right? So
I believe so. I believe that too. Last Saturday, I forget now. Last week, Maria Ressa and I did a live, and neither of us understood that we were live. I mean, it was a festival in Hong Kong, and we thought it was a recorded Q&A. But they let us in the room, and it was an audience in the theater. Of course, not full capacity because they had to social distance. But it was like it took my breath away, Maria. I was like, oh my God, it's a live audience. I'm talking to a live audience. It was so exciting. I said, I need to process this. I thought we were recording a Q&A. For some reason, I didn't get that it was a live audience. And I had to be up at 3:30 in the morning. And I said yes, but it didn't occur to me that it was live. I don't know why. I missed a conversation. But when the audience came up on my screen on Zoom, I felt like embracing all of them. There they were with their masks, and I was just like, wow. So I got so excited. I'm like, wow, this is great. I was talking to a live audience.
I have to
But
say, it's
just
such
seeing
a
the film.
special thing, right? It's such a special
Super,
thing. So, yeah,
super, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So we have another question from Professor Lauren Shaw, who also teaches here and says hello.
Hi.
And she would like to know, what was your editing process like? I know it was rushed, but can you talk a little bit about that? You've had the same editor for many films, Leah Marino.
Yeah. So yes, I've had the same collaborator, Leah, and my process with her is always the same. I bring her in very early, and basically what I do is that we call it data dumping. I just dump all my ideas on her. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, blah blah, and she just absorbs it all. She absorbs all my data dumping, and she's used to it. This is what we've done over like 5 films now. And so with this, we were sending footage as we filmed, and she was watching footage, not really cutting, just watching. She just wanted to see what I was capturing, and then I'd have a conversation with her maybe every other week when I was in the Philippines, so she could tell me what she was seeing that was really interesting, what she wasn't getting. I would tell her, "Oh my God, there's this new character I love, blah blah, blah," and I would again data dump. I would just give her everything, and she would just, she would just take notes and basically listen and absorb to what was happening on the field. And so we did that throughout production. That's what we typically do. And then at the end, when I wrap, we wrap but didn't wrap because, as you see in the film, it's against the backdrop of midterm elections. Midterm elections ended, but then Maria was still traveling. So we still traveled with her. But she's already started cutting. She started already putting string outs of every character, like 20-hour string outs of every character. And by the time I settled and sort of was still cutting, was still traveling, shooting with Maria, I could already stay home and watch like hours and hours and hours. And she would flag it for me. These are the great parts. And I knew the great parts too, because I take notes on the field, right? My golden moments, shots, and my silver. We have golden, silver, and bronze. So the golden and silver. So I take notes too, and basically she flags for me my golden that wasn't so golden, or we agree on the goldens and stuff, and that's how we talk about golden moments. And then when we're finally able to come together and start editing, we start where we actually tackle the things that we love most, right? Because otherwise you'll never start. We don't start from the beginning. We never think of how it's going to begin. We never think of how it's going to end. What are the most yummy parts, right? What are the parts that she got excited over and I'm excited? And let's put that together. Let's see if it's still yummy. So that's what we do. And then we hang it up on the wall. We just put it up on the wall. This is great. This is a great scene, great scene, great scene, great scene. And we knew by then Maria was the center of it. So there were the Maria scenes and then the Mocha scenes that we fell in love with too, and that's big. And then we put it all up on the wall, and then we start structuring. Where do we start? How do we start this? What do you need to know in the beginning in order for the audience to stay with you? And I love cold opens. I love just dropping you in and seeing what happens. Will you sink or swim? Hopefully you'll swim and then follow us on the journey. And to me, it's always a challenge to discover, okay, what is our cold open. Sometimes I know it, like very beginning, like Motherland. I knew that's how I would open the film, but this one, it was a discovery throughout. What's the code? How do we do this? How do we tell the story of Duterte in 5 minutes and then move on, right? And not if you had too many questions, that it would really prevent you from enjoying the film. We're not doing our jobs. But that you have a few questions, that's fine. That's fine. You can answer that later on. You can Google it, whatever, but you have to get involved. You have to get sucked into the narrative. But if you're always thinking, I don't know, I should know this, but then we're not doing our jobs as filmmakers, as constructing a story that you should be, sucked into and go on the journey and get rid of the things that you don't know, that don't really matter. Because when we're trying to explain a culture and system in so quickly to get to the arrests and the drug war and everything. So that was the process. That was the process. And it's always like that. This time we worked at the warp speed, and we always argue. There were more arguments this time. Just because. Yeah.
You were working so fast also. There's one, I want to get to one last question because we're running out of time now, but it's such an
Wow.
excellent question.
Okay.
This one's from Jeremy Alliger. How can journalists fulfill their duty, their mission of being watchdogs of the government while being threatened and targeted by the power in place?
That's a great question. You just fasten your seatbelt and do it, and I've found that journalists have the capacity to really just focus on the work, and they do believe in the mission of journalism, to shine a light. That's what they do. They go and ask the questions that people in power don't want them to ask. And to them, it's always been that way. It will always remain that way. And yes, you're the target of you might be arrested. And that's a reality. The government's coming after you. But for as long as you're free and out there and able to do that, they do it. They just do it. They're pretty amazing people. Really, I admire them because they understand that the more the government clamps down, the more they should be watchdogs. Because if they have nothing to hide, they wouldn't be clamping down. So I think it's this journalist thing of, oh my God, what are you hiding? Why do you want us to shut up? We're not going to shut up because you're hiding something. And we're going to find out. And they do, it's their job. They take it so, it's not the fourth estate for nothing, right?
Ramona, thank you so much. This is such a wonderful, I want to clap for you because you don't have a live audience. And really, we're so lucky to have you come. You've come back with all of your films to Emerson, your alma mater, and you are welcome here. And of course, we want to celebrate your next film. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah.
And now we're going to have a little word from Anna, who's going to wrap up for us, who is the curator of the series.
Hello, everyone. I just want to say, first of all, just how lovely that conversation was from an exhibitor standpoint, just talking about the importance of being in a space in real time with other people and experiencing these together. The communal experience. I'm doing this virtually, but I'm a little sad about it, and I'm looking forward to hosting you again in the cinema, Ramona. And so we will do it. We will show this film on the big screen because I was lucky enough to see it at Sundance, and it was phenomenal. And I feel so privileged to have seen it in that space and with Maria and the conversation that was had. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'll just say, folks, that there is another one of these conversations, December 2nd. We have Sky Hapenka joining us. His film Dislocation Blues is already online. You can access it now. And that's going to be moderated by Catherine Ramey. So be sure to join us for that. And yes, thank you, Maria, so much for moderating this conversation. Thank you to Ramona. And good luck with where the film goes. For those who don't know, it's going to be on PBS in January.
Yes, I think January 8th.
Excellent. On Frontline, right?
Certainly. Frontline, January 8th. Yes. And it's the same version. It's the same version as your screening now, which is amazing. It's a 98-minute version. They agreed to screen it as a 98-minute version. It's great. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, congratulations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Maria. It's always a pleasure to talk to Maria. Thank you. It always is.
We always love it.
Oh my gosh. Yes, next time in person.
Yes,
oh my
please.
God. Oh my God, please. Yes.
Looking forward to it.
In the cinema, we'll say that. Next year in the Bright.
In the cinema. Yes.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.